You're listening to another episode of the Fredericksburg Strong podcast. This is a local forum to inform and entertain our community, discuss local news, promote small businesses, and celebrate our hometown heroes with a little dose of humor to keep you entertained. Our mission is simple: to keep Fredericksburg strong. Today's podcast is powered by Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai of Fredericksburg. And now, here's your host, Tim Pohanka.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Pohanka, and I'm here with a Fredericksburg Strong episode, and we're going to talk today about hiring and the employment market. And I'm very lucky to have Adam Robinson with us. Adam is the CEO and founder of Hireology. It is a national hiring and recruiting technology firm. Thank you very much, Adam, for joining us today.
Great to be here, Tim. Thanks for having me.
So, I've got a young son who's graduating from college right now. And so many of his fellow graduates have been told that their job letters of hiring are all being rescinded because of the way the job market is right now. And I think it's safe to say that this is the craziest job market we've ever seen in our lifetime, and probably I would dare say probably the country's lifetime. So let's talk about what that landscape looks like for these graduates.
Yeah, I thought I would never look back longingly at 2008 as a time when things were better, but I can say emphatically that this is the most challenging market for job seekers, certainly in my career. Really, I would agree with you in modern American history, with peak unemployment claims at 22.5 million just a couple of weeks ago. In a decade of job gains erased in 2 months due to COVID. If you're out in the market looking for work right now, it's a tough slog, no doubt.
So when these people are looking and they're graduating and they've got degrees, we talked before the show about you having a history degree. They're not going to. Is it time to start looking for a job, or is it still trying to hold on and find a job in their majors?
Yeah, it's a great question. The advice that I give recent graduates when asked in a market like this is, holding out for that perfect position that you thought was going to be available and might not be, is not a viable strategy right now. The viable strategy is to ask yourself the question: where do I want to be 2, 3, 5 years from now, and what do I need to learn, and what do I need to start doing in order to be on that path? And then find a position that may not be a direct bullseye for what you thought you'd be doing with your degree, but that gives you access to opportunity to learn and do, so that you can start your journey. The most important thing to do as a recent graduate in a market like this is get on a path. Right? Find a role where you feel you can learn and grow, and then navigate your way over the next 24 months to opportunities that are directly in line with the trajectory you want for your career.
Now, when we look at this, we've got some people who work here, and they never really thought that their career path would take them into automotive. But once they get into automotive, they're realizing that there are other opportunities inside of the automotive space that they can take advantage of. Do you think that, when they're looking at this, they should start to sit there and say, okay, once they're there, look for those new opportunities inside those companies that they may never have even considered?
Yeah, and what I love about our industry, Tim, is that, a dealership is 5 or 6 businesses under one roof. We've got a new car business, we've got a used car business, we've got a finance and insurance business, we've got a parts business, we've got a service business, and for most dealers, we've got a fairly robust real estate operation. And so the thing that I implore dealers to do when they're branding themselves in this industry, in the job market, is talk about the breadth of opportunity inside this business. It's not just about selling cars. I mean, I'm a believer that everyone in the business should have the opportunity to sell vehicles and have that experience, even if a career in sales is not the career you're looking for, because it gives you the perspective and experience to do so many other things in the industry, right? You have the opportunity to move into F&I. You have the opportunity to go work for OEMs coming out of retail. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can take it. And so this industry, I believe, is the best kept secret for learning business broadly and learning core skills that are going to serve you throughout your career.
You know, it's funny you should say that, as I spoke to a gentleman a couple months ago who actually interned with us when he was in college, and he now actually runs, or he's the assistant manager at a Harley Davidson store. And his journey from just an intern through selling and doing some work in service to now, you know, co-running a store was a pretty epic journey for him. And it is amazing how quickly that can happen in it. Sorry,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, no, it's okay. You know, that's absolutely the case. Like your opportunity is limited in this business for the most part only by your own willingness or desire to produce and do your best. And so, you know, I can think of few other industries where you can go from entry level to running a $15 to $30 million frontline retail operation inside of 5 to 7 years. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, the top performers who aspire to do big things can come in and be running a store in their late 20s, early 30s. I mean, that's pretty spectacular. It's a lot of responsibility and a real opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes our group interesting, is when we start to look at it. Yes, we're a family industry, family-run business, but we've got people who started with, you know, in ownership, who started with as receptionists. You know, Sandy Fitzgerald over in our Salisbury location started as a receptionist. If you look at Lenny, who now runs our store in Texas, started as a lot porter. I mean, it is one of those industries where it doesn't matter where you start. If you have that desire and that drive, you can go to the sky's the limit. But, you know, those are few and far between at times, because it does take a lot to acquire talent for a store and for a location. You know, let's talk about that time to acquire a talented person, because with so many people looking for work and what they're out there, what should they be looking for in a company as much as we are as a company looking in that for them?
Yeah, there are three things, Tim, that we know from our research job seekers are looking for when they're deciding on their next career path. And the biggest thing to remember is that A players always have opportunity. And so it's true that over the last 4 years, it's been an applicant's market. I mean, folks have had their pick of employers. You know, dealers used to compete with one another for talent on dealer row in their market, but now we're competing with everyone for everybody, right? So we're competing with the Amazon distribution center that's paying $15 an hour. We're competing with the financial services firm and the banks in our communities that are after that same A-level talent. And so even in a down economy, A players still have their pick. And there are three things that they look for when ranking employment opportunities. The very first one is career path. If I come to work for you, what's in it for me beyond a paycheck that gives me incentive to spend the first 2 years of my career with you? What learning and growth opportunities will I have? You know, that's number one. It's career path and it's future earning potential, number one. So, you know, career path doesn't mean job for life. The average new graduate will have an average of 23 different employers by the time they reach retirement age at 65. 23 different employers, which, doing the math, is I'm changing jobs every 2 years. And, you know, when I came up, and certainly when you came through, if people had more than 2 jobs in the first 5, 7, 10 years of their employment, you called them a job hopper. Today, you know, the way the system is set up here in the U.S., you know, the way to get ahead is by changing jobs every 2 years. And so it's not the stigma that it once was. employees will reevaluate every 24 months on average and ask themselves the question, am I getting more than just a paycheck? Am I on the path? So career path, biggest number one thing job seekers look for. Second, and this is a real challenge in our industry, it's not most pay, it's actually pay stability. So if I come to work for you, can I count on a level of income that will allow me to pay my student loan debt, to pay rent, and to have a little bit left over to have some kind of a life? And so highly variable pay plans make it more challenging to check that box in this industry, particularly in variable ops roles. And I'm certainly not here to preach changing pay plans to base pay, but what I can say is that the more pay that is guaranteed or base, the broader the talent pool that dealers will have access to, and the higher their retention over time. Those are directly correlated. That happens in variable ops, and it happens in fixed for techs, right? Moving to base pay off of a flat rate plan improves recruiting and retention for techs as well. And then the third thing is what we used to call work-life balance, but now it's just life, right? So if I come to work for you, will you as an employer give me the flexibility I desire to live the life I want to live? Do you offer shift flexibility, or are you running me bell to bell 6 days a week? Will I have the ability to have some of my nights and weekends off? Are you going to manage effectively so that I have flexibility in my personal life while I make the investment in helping you build your business? Those are the three things: career path, pay stability, and flexibility that employers who want to go after A-level talent should be putting front and center in their recruiting strategy.
It's interesting you say that, because with COVID and with everything that was going on, all the rules went out the table. I mean, they're gone. Everything, the standards, everything that we used to we rest on, all of our practices had to be looked at, and one of them was definitely hours that we were open. And we've made changes based on that. Do you see that as a trend from everyone else? Is that they looked at, oh my gosh, we were shut at 7 o'clock, we were shut at 8 o'clock, and we really didn't see any loss in production from our team?
Yeah, interesting you bring that up. I mean, I was talking with Automotive News, in fact, yesterday about this very thing. The question was, do I think employment will be coming back to pre-COVID levels? We've lost, between March 10th, when lockdown started, and the end of May, approximately 40% of the jobs in automotive retail either went away or went on temporary full furlough. So about 40% of employment was severely impacted in the business. We are back now here in the middle of June, about 10 to 15% below where we were at the peak on March 10th. And so jobs have come back, but we're still 15% below where we were in terms of jobs in the U.S. My prediction is that, with the shift to digital retailing, so revenue could continue, dealers have learned very quickly that they can move the number of units that they need to move with fewer employees per store to do it. So we've seen productivity metrics. I'd be curious to see if you're seeing this. Productivity metrics have improved. We're within 10% broadly of the forecast for units sold or SAR at the beginning of the year for June, and we're doing it with 25% fewer people. I think dealers are going to try to figure out how to maintain that production at the lower headcount per store. That's where we are here in June 2020.
I think that's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the biggest complaints that I've overseen is that when you look at the technology that has been brought to the car industry, we don't gain that same economies of scale or productivity increase that other industries have seen with technology. When you look at CRM tools, that customer relations management tools that were brought in, the internet itself, how we're getting leads that are sent to us, we just don't see that increase where the average salesperson is still selling within one or two cars of what they were 30 years ago. how we do affect going forward with technology, I do think is an important part. And that was going to be my question: is how much of technology, or what technology changes can we expect to see to increase productivity? And that's a very important question. Where's that going to go?
Yeah, the ultimate bottom line question is, how do I get more unit production out of a sales head? And you nailed it. We're within 2 cars of where we were in the 70s. And so what's the issue? The issue is that, broadly speaking, at least in my opinion, dealers have not changed their business model. I don't want to interrupt
you on that, but I want to follow up that real quick. Is it the dealer's business model, or is it the consumer business model?
Well, I think they're closely related. Sorry for the delay there. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
Digital retailing really is a path to get more units per head. So as I think about the business model, if I'm a dealer, I'm thinking, how do I give more opportunities to sell a vehicle to an individual on my payroll? I do that by giving consumers the opportunity to get up to the 1 yard line in the buying process without having to get people involved, so that my associates are spending more time getting them into the end zone than standing around waiting for ups to walk through the door. And this is a real opportunity for dealers to experiment with getting more volume out of on a per head basis by letting technology do more of the selling for them, which, as you said, is exactly what the consumer wants to experience, right? Consumers don't want to run through the hoops we've set up because of the way we've traditionally done business. What they want is to buy vehicles largely the way they buy everything else today, which is to start online and transact online. And COVID has been a forcing mechanism to get dealers to accelerate that journey. It's better for their bottom line, and it's better for the consumer. It's what everybody wants.
Here on the ground, though, we're seeing something slightly different, which is interesting how you bring that up. We're still seeing people want to come to the dealership. I would say if you look at the number of people who are using our digital retailing tool, and we've had one in place for, I think, 3 years now, they're using it sparingly enough to get a certain amount of the transaction done. I think there's still a lot of fear of big data. I think there's still that feel, felt, found. They want to feel it. I think the part that dealers have to realize is that digital retailing is not necessarily they're going to buy the car online and come in and fill their paperwork or expect the keys to be ready. It's how you're helping with that journey. But that's what we've seen here. Hopefully we see a better usage of it, but that's really what we've seen.
Yeah, I think I saw a study from Cox Automotive a couple of weeks ago that said it's something like 84% of car buyers still want to test drive the vehicle. They still want to come to the store. I mean, buyers absolutely still want to come into the retail establishment, but they just want the process to be easier. And if we're talking about employee level productivity, how can I get more leads, more buyers through one sales head? How do I get units per head up? I do that, generally speaking, by transitioning my sales associates to more of a product specialist model than I do a traditional commission-driven salesperson. That not every market or every dealership is the same, of course, but just categorically, those concepts, I think, are what makes those numbers go up over time.
I think I definitely would agree. I think market by market and what people are expecting definitely plays into it. We talked a little bit about the job market, and one of my questions was going to be, I'm confused as to whether it's an employer market or an employee market, because 3 months ago we couldn't find talent anywhere. Now there's a lot of people, but they're not necessarily looking for work. Is the government artificially keeping people unemployed?
Yes. So the biggest challenge that employers face today for jobs that pay between 25 and 50K a year is that the enhanced unemployment benefit that runs through July 31st pays you more to stay home and not work than it does to come in and work. And so until that benefit expires, we are going to continue to have an artificially deflated applicant market because I can make 50K a year to sit home. And I'm not saying that wasn't an important benefit that helped keep the U.S. economy from completely collapsing. I think the consumer spending data shows that people, either through the stimulus check, through tax rebates or refunds, or through the enhanced unemployment benefit, have been able to pay rent and live life, and that's been good. But we're at the point where until, as jobs come back, that benefit really needs to go away if we're to get back to a naturally functioning labor market. Right now, that benefit does make it highly competitive. You're competing against getting paid not to work, and that's a tough position to be in right now. I think we've got another month and a half of that at least.
And now, which the part that's interesting is if you look at the industries that have really been hammered, it is your services industry, your restaurants, people who work at sporting events or those types of things. That's really the people who have been hurt the most. We've been, for the most part, dealerships have been open. A lot of places have been open. The listing of stores that are open versus the stores are closed is pretty narrow. So, how does that government impact really affect future wages? Do you think people are going to be less likely or more likely to want to look for those jobs that they had before that were paying less than what they were getting from the government?
Well, that would certainly, my hypothesis would be yes, people would look to make more, but a job is worth what it is worth to the business, and so unless we're permanently increasing the wage floor federally or at the state level, raising the minimum wage, I think that the value of the role will be what it was. I think folks are going to maximize the benefit, and that's just human nature. I do think as long as that benefit it continues, it creates an artificially high wage floor that we all have to compete against, and that's good for the individual who's getting the benefit, but it's really challenging for the business owner who's competing against it because you end up paying more than the work is of value to the business, and that's just not a good situation to be in. Of course, when you raise the price of labor, the market needs less of it. You find ways to automate and to optimize. So ultimately, this is an apolitical view, but what the data says is, you lose jobs when you artificially raise the wage floor, and that does crowd out some entry-level work. It shrinks the size of job opportunities at the entry level or low end of the market. And you get your start, you referenced as a porter or lot attendant. I mean, if we're hiring less porters and lot attendants because that wage is artificially inflated, that's less opportunity for people to start the path to become a GM someday. That's really not good.
So when you look at areas that have already had new minimum wages passed, how does the market look for places like Seattle in the car industry? I mean, obviously we're talking about that right now. Are you seeing less and less of those higher income, lower job talent required jobs, or what's been going on in those markets?
Yeah, so Seattle is a great example. They were one of the first to go with the $15 minimum wage. And the industry that got hit there were restaurants. I mean, restaurants and Main Street retailers were hammered. And you see fewer restaurants opening, you see more restaurants closing. It eliminated jobs. I mean, there are tens of thousands of jobs in Seattle that went away because of the increase of minimum wage. Dealers have a minimum number of folks they need to just run basic operations. So the effect on dealers, I haven't seen the number of heads declining in areas where they've raised the minimum wage. All I've seen is dealers take a bottom line hit and try to make it up somewhere else. And that's obviously not a great scenario. We already have enough margin pressure in the business, without having artificially inflated wage bases. But it just, you got to pay for it somewhere, and dealers in those markets have paid for it out of profitability.
Well, you're right, but I mean, obviously, anytime that you start to pay out more to production, you're going to increase your retail price. So while there has been pressure on margins, I think this is one. It's kind of one of those ones. It is what it is.
It is. Ultimately, consumers pay that price, right? The consumers will pay more for service. They'll pay more for cars.
I mean, I think labor is the area. If I use the service department as just an example, when you look at what technicians are, because not only do we have an increase in minimum wage for workers coming in, you have a dwindling talent pool where there's less and less and less of them. And that also brings wages up. I mean, when I start to look at what some labor rates are around the country, it just boggles my mind. But that's because you have to pay a lot of money to recruit that talent.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got a double whammy going on in the fixed ops side of the business, where we're going to need, as an industry, over the next 10 years an additional 75,000 technicians, but we only know where 35,000 of them are coming from. So you've got twice the demand. It's a huge supply-demand imbalance. And then you add to that markets where Amazon is paying $15 minimum wages. It raises the floor for everyone, and it just exacerbates the situation. And I'll refer back to my comment on flat rate pay. For techs in particular, third-party service providers tend to pay techs for their time, where dealers tend to pay techs for the work that's complete. And so I think about the concept of pay stability. I can go work my 40 to 50 hours at the third-party oil change down the street, and I know exactly what I'm going to make. That same amount of dollars, depending on the jobs I do in a dealership, I could do that in 30 hours. I could do that in 70 hours. I just don't know. And so that flat rate pay creates a little bit of uncertainty. It just makes it tougher. And I'm competing against a higher guaranteed pay rate. It is additional pressure, no doubt.
So when we start to look at that, high school graduation rates, I think, is our high schools and what we do in our high schools. The debate nationally has been about getting people ready for college, getting ready people for college. Where do you see the role of technical learning institutions? Are they in favor, or are people not realizing that there are these great jobs that are out there that don't require necessarily a college degree, but require more of a technical degree?
Yeah, this is an issue close to my heart here on this, Tim. When it used to be, prep for college, and a couple of things have happened. Number one, the jobs, the good paying jobs in this country are shifting slowly to more vocations driven roles than academic driven roles. So if I think about automotive technicians in our industry, or if I think about computer or software developers in the industry that we're in, look, software developers are our version of a technician. I don't care if you went to college. If you know how to build software and you taught yourself, if you've got the skill to do it, if you're naturally talented and a demonstrated capability, I don't want a college degree. I don't need that college degree. The other thing that's happened is that the price of that college education is rising 5+ times faster than the rate of inflation. And so, my goodness, is it worth $250,000 to get a history degree today so that I can, get my first job selling a product or service? I don't know. That value prop has shifted considerably. And I think in the next 5 years, what you're going to find is a real crisis in the post-secondary education market and business models. You're going to see a lot of private colleges close because the demand has dropped off. People are finding that there are great paying vocations where I can go to work right away, and I don't have this, 6-figure debt overhang for the rest of my life. And I think that's a good thing, frankly.
Now, I would agree. I mean, when I look at higher education now, the college that I went to school down here, I look at building after building after building being put up, and that's in their quest to be competitive with other schools that are putting these up. It's almost like they're in their own bidding war to get students in, but then keeping in mind that they have to pay for the upkeep on these buildings later. It's almost like that goes out the window. And that price of education just keeps rising and rising, and it's not necessarily reflected in teacher salaries. It's more in ancillary costs that go into it. So I think that
colleges have. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Well, the secondary education, competed for students, full price students based on amenities. So if I have the suite dorms, if I've got the great pool in the gym, the amazing stadium, the awesome cafeteria, boy, those are really high fixed cost amenities as a business model. We don't even know if colleges will be back in session in the fall. So parents will be asking the question, why am I paying $60,000 a year to have my child learn philosophy through Zoom? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So there's this great questioning of the value. What is the value of college? Is it the experience? Is it the amenities? Is it the learning? I predict there will be a crisis in that industry because these colleges have built so many fixed cost amenities to compete for students, and the number of students is going to drop. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, I don't know what your college was like, but I remember going to school here in Virginia in the summertime, going to freshman year, and there's not an air conditioner in the dorm. There was no phones in the dorm. There was, TV is if you had some rabbit ears, and good luck. So part of college at that time was kind of that transition from living with your parents with all these great amenities to living on your own-ish with very little amenities and just kind of getting by. I remember I think 20 years later when my son went to college, I remember listening to the person tell me, yeah, these dorms have pools in them, they've got Starbucks in them, they've got this. I'm going, huh? How's he gonna, when he goes to get his first apartment, what's he gonna say? Oh my God. So yeah.
We've delayed the reality of life by 4 to 6 years. You've got to feel broke to drive that motivation, right? If you want to improve your lifestyle or situation, and these universities have created these cocoons where it's just it's government subsidized Club Med education, and it's just not reality. And I think that's going to break in the coming years.
I would agree. I think we've definitely seen it's becoming definitely top heavy in that. Let's take it to the next level. We obviously know we can agree that vocational education is important. Why is it that we're not spending the money in vocation? What is that shiny? What's not making it a shiny penny? What's making college be the thing that we're focusing on versus potentially finding a better job?
It's a great question. I think there's lots of factors here. The biggest is just the historical perspective and the habits. There remains a perception that and the data still bears this out, that those with college degrees out-earn their non-degreed individuals in their respective cohorts over time by 30 to 40%. So it is still true that a college degree pays more over time, but the question becomes, but what's the bottom line benefit, right? If I'm making a little bit more every year, but I have to pay a $200,000 student loan back, which keeps me from buying a home sooner or investing in starting a family, getting married. We're seeing all these life milestones get delayed by 10 years at this point. Kids, Gen Y are having millennials having children 10 to 12 years later than my Gen X cohort did. And I think it's just, when I went to school, I could have the part-time job and pay for room and board and tuition. That's just not possible anymore, by and large. And the second part of it is, I think it's just the incentive structure, right? If the federal government will give loans out to any student seeking a college education, and it's like healthcare, completely hide the cost of what I'm buying, give low cost loans that may be forgiven later, what incentive does the higher education system have to change that business model? Because the government's handing out trillions and trillions of dollars that just keeps the prices going up. The third thing is marketing. We need to do a better job as a nation in marketing the attractiveness and opportunity of vocational career paths in the country. Those three things are structural problems. They're very hard to change. And frankly, Tim, I don't know that they're going to change before we start to see private colleges start to fail because they're losing revenue because student numbers are dropping. At some point, that dam breaks.
And it's a really good. You brought up a good point about the marketing. When you start to look at those numbers about the earning potential after you go to with a college degree versus non, do we need to elevate the value of that technical skill training? To where we're looking at that separately than necessarily, a regular high school degree, a college degree, and a technical degree. Maybe that's something that we need to start to look at is, breaking all of that information down to see if anyone in these technical schools are making as much or possibly even more.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Tim. We're seeing apprentice electricians, apprentice plumbers, certainly, apprentice vocations in other industries. If I come out of a vocational school with the ability to be a plumbing contractor professional, the starting wage for a plumber in many markets is approaching $100,000 a year. And so that's pretty darn good. I was talking to some of the folks at Greyhound. The biggest issue that Greyhound has is not that they can't find drivers or technicians, it's that they can't find plumbers. Every bus has a toilet, and that's a pretty unpleasant ride if that thing goes sideways. And so Greyhound's biggest talent issue in recent years has been a lack of available plumbing apprentices. And so you think about the opportunities that are out there, they're plentiful and they pay very, very well. And I think we're going to see an uptick in interest and awareness about these career paths.
So, I wouldn't want to end a conversation with you without talking about benefits and what the advantage or disadvantage is now with benefits. I remember a time when our benefits were something that we would talk to people about and they would be excited. Now you start to talk to people benefits and it's almost like they're more focusing on their wage versus their wage and benefit combination. Is that something that you're seeing, or is that just me grasping at it?
No, I can tell you, at least in the Chicago market where we operate, the number one thing is base wage, right? More important than health benefits, more important than long-term incentives, stock options, or 401k matching, is what am I going to make today? Cash compensation eclipses long-term incentive in the workforce under age 35. I think the reason that's less important is directly tied to the fact that those things become really critical when you have a family and start thinking about college and retirement. Because we're starting families 10 years later than we did in previous generations, cash compensation is what's on a 25-year-old's mind more than anything else. But the second I'm thinking about retirement and college education and the long-term future of my family, boy, health benefits and 401k match and these longer-term total rewards programs really start to matter. I think the biggest emerging benefit that is making an impact other than cash comp are programs that help pay off student loan debt. So I've started to see dealerships increasingly offer student loan debt payback instead of 401k matching, for example. So, for every month you work for us, we'll pay you an additional $250 that helps you pay off your student loan debt that vests over time. I've seen that really start to work. It's a highly effective program that matters to this generation right now.
It's interesting you should say that, because that's definitely one of the areas where I was thinking about is where do they fall. Does the job jumping have something to do also with the lack of caring about benefits?
I think it does. What you find is, if you take someone who starts working for company A and they stay there for 10 years versus the wages for someone who works for companies A, B, and C over those 10 years, the person who's changed jobs 3 times makes on average 7 to 10% more than the person who stayed at the same company over that period of time. And that's just a function of the tightness of the labor market. So it is a fact. I can make more over time if I switch jobs more frequently, because people are going to pay me more to leave my job and come work for them. So that's the financial reality of it. It incentivizes job hopping. The way to counteract that is with career path, learning opportunities, and longer term incentives that keep people in the seat they're in or with the employer they're in for a long period of time. In automotive, 70% of people who start a job today are gone 3 years from now. So what we want to invert that. And the way we do that is with training programs and long-term incentives.
I know we've had you for a while, and I appreciate it. I was left with something that I was told to me a while ago, and I've kept it most of my career, is the dream. There are no dream jobs in the world. They're just jobs that you make your dream. And I think about that all the time, is that, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you can make it a great job if you choose to. It's how you go about it and how you impact it and what you think about it that makes a difference. Is there anything else that you think you would want to leave the people watching us with talking about the job market?
Yeah, I agree with, your attitude is a choice. Life is what you make of it. And as I like to say to my 4 kids, the world doesn't owe us anything. We got to go out and make our own way. And so certainly there are things you can get out of every experience if you have the right attitude. And that is exactly the advice I would give to job seekers in today's market. Everything's changed, many things permanently about the way we're going to do business in various industries. And the most important thing you can do is get your head right and go into the situation asking yourself with a growth mindset, what can I learn? How can I benefit most by doing the best I can do? And how does that get me on the path and the long-term vision I have for myself? Holding out for the perfect job is not the right strategy. Getting to the labor market and learning what I can and knowing where I want to go with it, that unlocks a path to success in a market like this one.
Well, thank you, Adam. I've had a great time talking with you. This has been a lot of great information. If anyone has not had a chance to check out Hireology's site, I would recommend it. We do use Hireology. They've been a godsend when it comes to doing some hiring. I have to go back there and look at that right after this conversation, as a matter of fact. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best. I know you've got, looks like your son was behind you there, so having a good time.
Yeah, we're all making it work. I am invading. The basement setup is the purview of our kids, and so I'm a guest in my own home these days, Tim.
Yeah, they're kind of looking at you going, hey, don't you have an office that you're supposed to be at that has all this stuff
right.
for you? So speaking of which,
isn't it time to go back to work, Dad?
Before I talk, when is that going to be for you guys? When will you be back at the office?
Chicago has lagged most of the nation in reopening. Our restaurants are reopening on June 26th, so we're far behind. Lots of the country. We've told our team that we are not reopening our office until after Labor Day, and so. And that's because, 80% of my workforce takes public transportation to work. They take the L or the Metro, or they take a bus. And people in the survey are more than comfortable being in an office, but they are not comfortable being on public transportation. And so, we don't want to put people in a situation to have to be uncomfortable to get to work. So we're work from home at Hireology until after Labor Day.
I'm going to extend this a little bit because it brings up another question. At what point in time do businesses who are centered in the city start to think, I may be better off being in the suburbia area and let our team members kind of commute the other direction where they're not having to take public transportation?
We're at that point now where we're getting questions from our team members. I think the right questions like, hey, productivity's gone up. We're doing better than we ever have on a per person productivity basis working from home. Can I still work from home? And I asked the question, do I care if we're getting it done? Do I care if people are working from the office or from the moon? It really doesn't matter. And so at least for our business, I think we'll be moving to a much more flexible environment where people can decide where they want to work and how they want to work as long as the work gets done. So it'll mean a smaller real estate footprint for us for sure over time. That's good for the business, and it's also what our team members want. So that I think is a trend we're going to see accelerate in cities. You just don't need to cram onto the train and come downtown we've proven for the last almost 3 months you can get a lot of work done from home, and that's a preferred way to work for lots of folks.
All right, before I go, I have to ask, White Sox or Cubbies?
Well, I grew up in Marietta, Georgia, so I'm an Atlanta Braves fan. But if I have to pick between the Cubs and the Sox, I am for sure a Cubs fan.
All right. Well, there's nothing like a day game at Wrigley. So we got family out there. Love Chicago. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you everybody for spending some time with us. This is Tim Pohanka with Fredericksburg Strong.
Thanks for listening to the Fredericksburg Strong podcast. Be sure to visit fredericksburgstrong.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content, as well as submit a request for you or your organization to appear on one of our future episodes. See you next time with another exciting episode of Fredericksburg Strong.